Number 5. What is the value of x if f of x is greater than g of x? In other words, this is what is the value of x whenever the line that represents f of x, this blue line here, is greater than g of x. So where is it above the red line? So it looks like g of x is above it until this point right there. And then the blue line continues to be above it until that point there. So it's between this point and this point where the blue line, f of x, this exponential graph, is greater than, above, the red line, which is a quadratic, g of x. So really all it's asking for is between what 2 points on x? So between 2 and 3. So how would I write that in interval notation? I would write it as between 2 and 3. Remember, these brackets mean that it is an interval between two x coordinates. So it's not a point 2, 3. It is between where x is 2 and where x is 3. That this blue line is greater than the red line. Part B for number 5 is what is the value of x if f of x is less than g of x? So less than g of x is where this blue line is below this red line. So really it's all the points not 2 to 3. So if from 2 to 3, so let me do this in a different color. If from 2 to 3 is where it's greater than, then anything larger than 3, so from 3 to positive infinity, so from 3 to positive infinity, and before this is, let's do brackets here, sorry. From 3 to positive infinity, and before this would be from negative infinity. So all of this is from negative infinity up until 2. So if the blue indicates where the f of x line, this exponential line, is greater than g of x, then all the other sections of the graph should be where it is less than, and it's underneath the red here, and then at this point it goes back underneath the red. You can barely tell, but it's there. So you could say both of these for part B. So from negative infinity to 2, and then 3 to positive infinity. And again, those brackets just indicate the x coordinates that they lie between. And remember, if it's greater than, it's going to be above whatever you're comparing it to. If it's less than, then it's when it's below. So even though this one is, it's like falling, there's a negative change here, this is still underneath that in terms of where it's located on the graph. So it's still considered less than. The vertex of g of x, so now we're only caring about g of x, this parabola. The vertex is the point where it turns around. Well, it just so happens that we've already kind of made that point, but this point right here is the point in which my u-shape goes from decreasing to increasing. And remember, the vertex is not an interval, it's a point. It's a point on the graph where this turns around, and if you find the point, looks like it is at point 2, 2. So part C, the vertex is at point 2, 2. And remember, this is an x and a y, unlike the interval notation. And then finally, part D, what is the average rate of change for both functions at the interval 2 to 3? So now I'm trying to find the average rate of change from 2, so from this point to this point. So how much is each changing? Well, it just so happens that this one crosses paths with the exponential graph crosses paths with the quadratic graphs at 2. So they actually are at the same point at that point. And they also at the same point at 3. So they have the same. So if I find the rate of change for one, I'll know the rate of change for both. Even though this one is an exponential graph, this one is a quadratic. Remember, all that I use is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. And both of these, they both share the same points, so I can find one and be able to find the rate of change of both. So where x is 3, because this is going to be x2 and y2, this point. This is going to be x1 and y1, this point, because it's the first one I hit, going from left to right. So y2 is going to be 4 minus y1, which is going to be 2, divided by x2, which is going to be 3, minus x1, which is 2. Then 4 minus 2 is 2, 3 minus 2 is 1. So the average rate of change is going to be 2. And so for part D, the rate of change, or the average rate of change between those two intervals, because they both share the same points at those two spots, will be the same. The rate of change is 2.